So, good evening and welcome. My name is Sue-Ann Waugh. I'm the Integrity Manager at Pony Club Australia. I'm running these club development webinars in support of Game Plan. That's pretty much what we've been doing over the last, since about March. Was it March? May? I can't remember. There's been 6 of them anyway. This is the very last one for this year, and we hope to look a little bit at next year. We've had some really great feedback, so I do ask anyone when I send them out, if you can give me some feedback, grab back onto those surveys, or even if you've watched the recordings, jump onto the surveys. I'll send them all out at the end, and just give us some feedback on what you would like, what you liked about them, what could be better, and where else you can see them happening, what would be useful for you out in the club world. It's not just at national level. We're trying to create a little bit of some collateral, really, so that we can maybe start training in lots of other places. So hopefully, yeah, if you give me some feedback, we can create a few resources which might help clubs to administrate, because it's not always the easiest of jobs. It sometimes can be tricky, but it's also very worthwhile. So we will send the recordings out to everyone who's on this session, and also just in general, I'll do a really big email at the end, putting everything on. These are all going up onto YouTube, so if you do want to watch them later or watch them in bits and pieces, feel free to do that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed tonight's session. So tonight's session is around recruiting and retaining members. I have said members in general. We'll look at writing members. We'll also look at volunteers, because they're pretty important to our clubs and the way Pony Club operates. Get my screens working. So this has been our development webinar series, the club development webinar series. We started back in May. There you go. Well, it wasn't March, it was May. And these are all the sessions we've gone through. Tonight's is recruiting and retaining members. So again, these are all up on YouTube at the moment. So you can, if you miss them, go back and have a bit of a look. Just a really quick overview. Tonight, we're going to look at game plan. We have done that in all of the sessions. And as I say, these webinar sessions have really been around trying to support the rollout of game plan and promote game plan. Game plan is quite a nice little product, so we'll have a bit of a quick look at that one. Leadership and culture, which we've looked at in each one of these webinars, and I'll go back over it so anyone who wasn't in those sessions can have a bit of a look through and just get that wording and why we're actually talking about it. What is your club culture? So we'll stop and have a little bit of a look and have a bit of a think about that. Directing and shaping culture and how we go about doing that. Recruiting members and retaining members. And there's a few other things in there as well. So welcome to everyone who is here tonight. We have people from all over, which is fabulous. It makes me feel good, because I know that the message is getting out across the nation and not just in one area. So we've got lots of people from New South Wales, WA, Victoria. Yeah, it's all over the place. So it's fabulous to have you here. Thanks for taking the time out of your evening to come and join me. So very quickly, game plan. Everyone who has been in these sessions will have got a little bit sick of this little chat, but I am really encouraging people to get into game plan. I said one of the places I'm going to go to next is to really ask my zones to jump in, or not my zones, the zones in across the country. You're on the ground with the clubs, and it'd be really great if you actually jumped in there and had a bit of a look at what this program's trying to do. There is no perfect way to build capacity in clubs, but I feel like this is a more structured way for clubs to jump in and maybe be able to take bite-sized pieces to create something great over a journey. So I do encourage you to jump in and have a look, sign up and have a little cruise around. Next year, and particularly if you give me some feedback, we might start to look at a few more workshops to try and support you through that program. So if you tell me that that's what you think you might need, then we might go down that path next year. So what it is doing is helps you to assess your club's current capacity. That's what game plan does. So there's a little bit of a module sort of thing in there just to help you try and work out where your club might be at. Supports ongoing development and does it in kind of a way that it helps to help you understand what maybe you need to build in your club to produce greater capacity. It's got small steps in it, so you don't have to do everything at once. It's just got these little steps that you can take, so baby steps to create something big. There is a great suite of resources in it, so that's pretty cool, and they've changed that up recently, so it looks a bit different. And most importantly, it's free, so it's just there, free for your use. This is what the participation module looks like. So every time I've done one of these webinars, I've tried to sort of base it a little bit on the modules that are in game plan. So there's two modules really that cover off on tonight's webinar, participation and workforce. So they're both looking at recruiting members and recruiting volunteers and then also retaining them. So what can we do in our clubs? What might be need in place? What might help us to do that? So you'll see at the moment what it does after you've answered a little questionnaire, which usually aren't very long. They're about 10 or 15 questions at the most. It gives you a current maturity rating. So it says at this, when I answered it, this it's not in place for my club. So my next maturity rating would be developing. So I can do some things to help get myself up to the next level. What I do like about this is that it does say, what does my current maturity rating look like? So we'll actually have a look at that in a moment. I can create an action plan, so I can actually start creating plans which you can action yourself. So then you've got a bit of a list, so you know where you're going with certain things, you know what you have to do. And in this case, there's a project in there called Develop Club Constitution, and so that one obviously is not to do with participation, that's to do with another module, but it lists everything that's in there. So you'll see in this little bit here, it says, what does my current maturity rating mean? And so the things like I don't have any induction procedures in place to welcome and actively involve new participants and or families. So one of the things it will tell me to do is I can create an induction process, and there will be some resources in there to help you look at what you might be doing to create an induction process. And if there's not resources in there, then we'll probably start developing more or going around finding things. So, and then of course it says, how can I improve my performance? So then it gives you a whole heap of ideas about what you could go around doing to lift yourself up to the next level. So that's a little overview of what game plan's trying to do. Leadership and culture, just a really quick touch on this. We've talked about leadership each time, and the reason I talk about leadership is because you are most likely on committees, you're most likely leaders in your organisation. That's why you're here with me tonight. This Kevin Kruse definition of leadership. Kevin Kruse is a guru in leadership. He's comes from the US, but this is his definition of leadership, which is quite a nice one for clubs. And the reason I think it's nice is because of these words. That leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. So as committees, we want to have goals. We want to be trying to aim to do something. We want to get people excited about what we're doing. So that's communication. So that's the social influence part. We want to maximize the efforts of others because we want people to come in and help us do this. So that's what leadership looks like. And in actual fact, it looks like planning, communication, understanding what jobs you're doing. So that's like the governance element, getting people involved. So getting people excited about coming and helping us and not doing all the work. Now that works really well in probably the slightly larger clubs. When it becomes to, who do we have earlier with the 7? Who was that? Sorry, I've forgotten. There was a club out there and they haven't got a lot of people on board. So it might mean that you guys are divvying up jobs yourselves. But in looking at what that looks like, sometimes when you're in a smaller group, you might be doing more work, but in trying to increase your group. That was me, Felicity. That's right. Thank you. That even if you've got 7 of you, probably looking at what jobs are being done, trying to divvy them up, trying to create actual jobs, that if you grow and get a bit bigger, then maybe you can engage more people in the activity of helping you run the club. So what is culture? Culture, this is a commentary on culture that came out of the Bluestone Edge Group review on the Australian Olympic team, swim team that went to London and failed dismally from what they were expecting to achieve at that Olympics. So, of course, came back and said, hey, what went on there? And this was out of that report. And Dr. Pippa Grange talked about culture as being complex and multifaceted. And it's something that we learn, so we just pass it on from moment to moment. It's about norms and expectations, about things that we just do and we don't even think about. It grows over time, can be directed and shaped with sound leadership and strong methodologies, strong leadership and sound methodologies. Now, the reason we are talking about that is because it is sort of these two elements are kind of the basis of your club. So being aware that we do have a leadership group and we are the people that set the tone of our organisation, and also that if we don't like what's going on, we can change it. We just have to have a bit of an idea that that's actually what's going on. And tonight's session particularly lends itself quite nicely to culture, because sometimes it might be the culture of our club that is limiting our ability to actually bring in members or hold on to members. So what is the culture of your club? When you think about the culture of your club, I'd encourage you to say, what do you value at the club? So you as an individual, but then what do the members value? So what's going on at the club? What do people want? What do they see as important? Um, and sort of trying to tease that out somehow. So when you do that, potentially it's by asking people, what do they love about your club? What don't they like about your club? That might help you to get that information. And then you can start to look at it and say, yeah, we actually love this about the club. This has been something that's really important to us. We need to make sure that that remains something that we do, because we think that draws people in, but we don't really like this element that's kind of coming in. We think that's actually causing people to leave. So you might find that in your little club culture, there's certain things that are happening that might be making people feel uncomfortable and leave, or just unhappy in general and leave. So having a bit of a look at what's going on in your culture is not a bad idea. And as I say, the leadership team, it's kind of your job. So um, have a bit of a think about it is pretty much, I'm just putting it out there, having a bit of a think. What kind of culture helps to recruit and retain members? So having a bit of a think about it, these are kind of some of the elements we'll be looking at tonight, but having a bit of a think about it in general. So if you're thinking about your own club, what we're doing, inclusive of all people, so that we actually try and include everyone and anyone who comes to the door, that we, however we can help them, we try and help them. We were talking recently that it's kind of a little bit tricky in Pony Club, because someone mentioned that a lot of the questions they get are around the fact that, do I have to have my own horse? So yeah, it's an interesting one, because obviously that's a little barrier in Pony Club, something to be put in the back of your mind and have a bit of think of. Be welcoming. So generally having someone assigned to welcome new members is a culture that we might like to have in our club. Induction, we talked about that just in the participation one. Induction, people are given a tour and understanding the ins and outs of the club. So what's important, what happens, uniforms, how things happen, competitions, volunteerism, how the club actually works. So actually having an opportunity to really talk through those things. Handbooks to read, and understand how the club works, so that obviously if they've gone through this process saying, hi, it's really great, this is here, this is there, this is where the toilets are, this is where we bathe the horses, whatever's going on in the club, this is what we do here, that's what we do over here, we need everyone to pick up after themselves, that type of thing. You might then put that all in a handbook so that people can access it when they need it, and put it through things like websites, so it's also accessible in that space. Be a community asset. So thinking about your community, how does your club, what are people's thoughts about your club in the local community? Do they really love your club? Do they think that you're an asset? So having a bit of a think about where you're sitting with that one. Connected with members, so knowing what the members want and providing it. Social connections, creating a great community at the club. So actually having a really great social network at the club. Often we'll have a look later on tonight. That's often what people are looking for when they join clubs. Great facilities that are welcoming, clean, and accessible. Clear promotion. So again, the idea that someone fielding a lot of questions around, do I have to bring my own horse? Maybe we need to make it a bit clearer already somewhere on that club website about what you need to be doing when you join the club and what you can provide. So that clear promotion, so that people are aware of who you are and what you're doing. Also that clubs don't always do everything. So there are clubs that obviously can't offer cross country because they don't have cross country course. So being able to show people that up front might help a little bit for them to understand who you are and what you can offer. Sound governance, so having clear policies and procedures so people understand the expectations of the club, what's going to happen if they don't uphold those. Great communication, so people know how to find things and they know what's going on at the club. A clear strategy, so actually knowing where the club's going and actually knowing yourselves as a committee where you're trying to take the club, and being able to articulate that to other people so they know and they can get involved with what the club's planning to do or trying to achieve. Strong grievance and disciplinary processes and procedures, which is one of the things we are looking at the moment globally. as a nation, how to produce really great governance, grievance and disciplinary procedures and processes. Partnerships with schools, communities, groups, and cultural groups. So, actually having connections with the community groups in your area, other sporting clubs that might actually help augment um, your membership and their membership. Seek opportunities to make it clearer for people to experience the club and ensure members' opinions and ideas are sought on a regular basis. There are a few things to think about. That little link down there is one of the ones I'll send. That came out of WA and it's called the Club Standards for, I can't recall exactly what the document was called, but it was quite a nice little document that talked about all the things you might like to think about. And as I say, I regularly keep saying to clubs, you don't have to do everything, but you might be able to just draw on some of the information that's out there to produce a better outcome. So directing and shaping culture, we spoke about that. Dr. Pip Grange talked around the fact that you can actually shape culture. So if you don't like what's going on at your club, you just need to identify what it is that you don't like and then start to change that culture. And as we say, it does change over time. So it will be a requirement to actually just keep pushing out the same message. Generally speaking, that a methodology that exists is around defining the behaviours. So we talked about that, talk about it in your club, know as a leaders what you want, understand what the members kind of want in this area, define those behaviours that you're comfortable with, document those behaviours. So whether it's policies, whether it's handbooks, whether it's any written space that you can write these things in. So there's heaps and heaps of places we put this, you might put on your website, but document the behaviours that you want. So this might be around volunteerism, putting it up front that you need volunteers. This is a not-for-profit club, we need volunteers. I often find it interesting, and clubs increasingly don't have websites. We'll talk about it too later tonight. But websites give you a great opportunity to actually sell this point that you're a volunteer space, you're a volunteer committee. These are the people that do the jobs. These are the jobs that they're doing. This is what it looks like. And these are the jobs that are all vacant right now. And we're looking for people. So that's defining that little space in that you do actually need people to pitch in and help, let alone all the other little jobs that need doing along the way. Create the buy-in. So buy-ins are like telling people what's going on, making sure that they're communicated, that we do those things generally upfront. So when people are buying in, they buy into it. And that we reinforce those behaviours. So that's probably disciplinary actions as well as celebrating when we get the behaviours that we want. So recognizing people's great behaviour, celebrating our volunteers, those types of things. So having a bit of a think about it. So that's a very quick run over a methodology around setting culture, but just thinking about it quite makes sense when you're doing it, that we define the behaviours, document them, let people know what they are and continue to let them know what they are, and then reinforce the behaviours as we get them. So we're just going to move in. So that little chat's more about almost like an underpinning of what might happen, how you actually get this opportunity to bring people into your club and to retain people in your club. We're going to have a bit of a look at a little bit of research, and you can find this in Clearinghouse for Sport on the Australian Sports Commission. There's been quite a few research papers run on volunteerism and participation in sport. There's a lot of Ausplay data out there, so there's lots and lots of information that will help you to understand what might be going on in this environment and how it might translate to your club. So barriers to participation, one of the major ones often comes back cost. I think you can balance out cost with people will pay for what they think is good value. But there was a little bit of conversation in some of the research around the high cost of participation. The median price for a year's worth of sport is $550 per year. And that did sort of range depending, that's median price, obviously. So sometimes you're up more around $1,000 for whatever the activity happened to be. So just having a bit of a think, and sometimes that high cost of participation, obviously if you've got 3 children, that becomes more expensive. And then also the fact that often it's lump sum payments. So having a bit of a think about how you stretch out payments or can give people payment options. Obviously, the database doesn't provide you with that, but there's a few opportunities you might have within that space where you maybe run a couple of events to pay a couple of deposits and then do a lump sum payment at the end. But having a bit of a think about it and probably even asking people, because that might be something you do get back that is just too costly. So the club can maybe start to look at what can I do cost-wise? Is there something we can do? Because this is a barrier. Additional costs obviously also compound that. So we have some pretty big doozy ones in horse sport, along with vet bills and feed and general horse care stuff. But uniforms, transportation is something else. Activities in general, so extra activities, and obviously for us in with horses, agistment might also be another cost that people are paying. So just being a bit mindful in this space that we should try it is a barrier. It might stop people from being involved. So just having a bit of a think as your club, if that's a barrier, is there something we can do about it? And potentially you need to run, you don't want to run insolvent. So sometimes there may not be anything else, but it might just be being a little bit more creative around how we can help people pay those costs over a longer period of time. And volunteer time for parents, which again comes down to the culture chat we've had a bit of a chat about and what the culture is and whether people buy into that culture. But that cost there is less financial and more the time. I'm going to spend X amount of time here. So sometimes I think with that barrier, it's around how do we have the parent believe that there's value in spending that time. Competence, physical literacy, which is a really interesting one and something to be considered, particularly for people joining us later. So if we've got the littlies and they just grow up in the sport and they're quite comfortable and they're learning at the rate they're learning and they're comfortable that they've not known things, they now know a bit more and they're going to learn a little bit more. That's not as big a drama as someone coming in at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 when they're older. That physical literacy, sometimes the fact that I'm going to look silly or I don't know what to do, I don't know how I'm going to do things, that sometimes is a barrier. And generally speaking, to get over that barrier, you're often looking at putting in more beginner entry type experiences. So, or come and tries we were talking about just before, something that's a little bit of a soft entry. Being able to show people that it won't matter. We're going to be able to work with you to increase your competency. Milestone coaching might also help. So knowing that we're going to try and achieve certain things, so people get that confidence that that's what you're headed for. And it's particularly important for girls and women. We have a lot of girls and women in horse sport, but it is particularly important because this is seen in the research as one of the things that definitely stops women and girls from getting involved in sport in general, and certainly would still be probably in this space as well. So that feeling confident can be a bit of a barrier for people to jump into sport, especially at a later stage. Um, Cultural and socioeconomic. So we're also coming back a little bit to cost, household incomes, education of parents does come into this, and that would probably come back to again earning capacity, so cost. Family size might also be one of those barriers. Language spoken at home does impact people participating in sport in general, but also would have an impact on whether they would come to Pony Club. Obviously, because to begin with, there's an entire language barrier, and I don't know how to even get involved with you. So, having a bit of a think about what that looks like in your environment, wherever you are, and whether that potentially is a barrier to participation, and whether you can you can leap over that one. Parental attitudes to sport again, and early school opportunities. So, with horse sport, we do have um, young children who are in the sport, but how early are we actually getting into a school environment to maybe even present the opportunity as something that they might want to do? There's lots and lots of sports that are getting in to school environments very, very early. And yeah, there's a lot of competition out there. So is there an opportunity for your club to start talking earlier in the local primary schools around the value of horse sport, the value of horse ownership, and the avenues to actually get into riding horses? The organisational capacity. So one of the reasons we're also talking about game plan in this space, the general member satisfaction. So how well your club is doing, keeping people happy. The standard and accessibility of facilities, knowing that people do come to your organisation to gain access to facilities. Quality of coaches, officials, and management. So is it well run? Are the coaches teaching me something? Are the officials able to officiate properly? Those types of things do impact people and can be a barrier to coming in. And generally speaking, it's probably a barrier to wanting to come back in. Positive, healthy, and inclusive cultures. Touching very quickly on coaching, because again, it's a barrier. Um, Having coaches that are producing fun, challenging environments and are showing cutting edge knowledge. That's generally speaking, if people want to come in, they want to learn something, that's what they'd be looking for. So other quick little barriers, geography, sometimes I'm just too far away from the activity, so I'm not going to get involved, which probably doesn't help you. It's just something to know. Role models, so can I see someone that looks like me? Can I aspire to someone? So really important for us to try and hold on to our older riders so that our young ones can see someone and want to aspire to be them, or parents, adult riders. Parents don't play the sport, so I know I'm saying sport in this case, but when people's parents don't play the sport, that is a barrier. So, and sometimes it's also that they just don't support the involvement. So obviously the parents are really important to try and get engaged and excited about what we're doing. People sometimes just lose interest in the sport or the activity that they're doing. So sometimes we might just decide we've had enough horse riding. Other things have come in. Commuting to barns is definitely something that you will experience, and we do experience in horse sport. Obviously, keeping horses does take a lot of time, effort, and energy. So yeah, sometimes when we get a bit older, we tend to lose that. We get some girls and some boys will just lose that desire to be there, or that they need to be at work, whatever happens. Sometimes too competitive, not social enough. That might be one of the reasons. So having a bit of a think about what's going on in your clubs. Do we have a space where people who just want to ride are there? Are we very competitive, but we don't have that? Too political, confrontational, inclusive. So those types of things. Now, I've just got that little link down the bottom there, if you can see it, factors influencing sport participation, clearinghouse for sport. If you want to pop in there, there's some really good research in there that'll just help keep the wheels moving, because sometimes we may not think about these things. So out of all those barriers, why do people participate? People join clubs to spend time with friends or to meet friends with doing a common activity. So doing something that people enjoy and everyone there enjoys it as well. To learn and improve at the chosen sport, so in this case, horse riding. Provide access to equipment, facilities, and coaching. We'll definitely see that in Pony Club. There's people who want to gain access to various things, so that's a reason to want to join a club. It's also a really good reason as a club to have a think about what you can offer in that space, because we are looking at membership and trying to broaden our membership catchment. This might be something that you can offer, so having a think about how you can offer it. Just to be healthier, to be active, mental stimulation, so that well-being space, that's why people get out. And certainly when it comes to horses, we have a real advantage in there, because it's well known that horses are a calming influence on people. Organised competitions and activities. So sometimes sometimes people prefer not to have that real structured approach. So that's where sometimes that's a barrier. But sometimes they are looking for those organised competitions so that they go, and in Pony Club's case, they're having their opportunity to have a little bit of a lesson, have a bit of a social space, and then go and have an organised competition so they can go and challenge themselves in a competition space. Having fun, being social, sense of belonging. Definitely clubs are around feeling like you belong to something. So definitely looking at that as something that you want to have in your culture, having a great sense of belonging, that people feel like they've got their second family. Enjoying people with common interest, which is pretty much the same as the first one, and then spending time as a family. Sometimes people will join clubs so that they can actually go around and do things together. So, and there's a reason to come together. So again, I'll send all those little links to that information. So now we're getting into the recruiting members. Got a little bit of theory behind us. We've worked out why people don't join things. We've worked out why people do join things. So what can we do? If we're going to recruit members, we know those types of barriers that are there. So we're sort of thinking about those. We know why people are really looking to be in clubs. What does our club offer? So sitting back and having a think, what are we actually offering as a club? What can we provide people? How many people can we provide that service to? So sometimes we might cap ourselves, but is there a potential that we can actually offer other services, or can we start to look at broadening our membership catchment? Yeah, it's having a bit of a look at what we're actually doing, what we can offer. Who might be interested in your services? So having a bit of a think about who's out there and might actually be interested in coming in and being part of the club. Where are we going to find these people? So where are they likely to be? What types of communication promotion will help your club reach them? So what are we actually going to look at? Who are we going to use social media? Are we going to use a little bit of advertising? Are we going to try and get into local magazines? What is it that we can do to get our voice out there and get our club out there? And where are we going to get the best bang for our buck, really? That's that whole marketing comms sort of space. Is there someone else my club might offer that might attract members? So is there a group that I'm not getting at this point? Is there a group that I want to try and get? What might actually bring them in? So having a bit of a think about that. So there are a few programs out there that are pitched at certain age levels. So is that going to help me? The fact that I don't have ponies, there's a couple of Rise About Horses programs that run in Pony Club with volunteer clubs who happen to have the capacity to do it. Is that an opportunity? So those types of things might help us bring in members who have barriers in place. Keeping in mind the barriers, as I said before, so what might stop people from joining, particularly with Pony Club, if I'm joining as an older rider, just keeping in mind that people are probably going to be very uncomfortable, especially if I'm 17, I really don't know what I'm doing, and I end up in a group with 6-year-olds. Having a bit of a think about how you're going to actually balance that environment and have that person feel not silly is pretty much the simple way of putting it. Um, and can you work around the barriers? Because potentially there might be barriers in the way, and you go, look, we just can't. I've got 8 riders, and I know I've got these 2 people. I just can't really accommodate them. So you have to start thinking a little bit on that level too. So having a clear strategy around what you want to do will help you actually recruit people, because you might be able to target your energies in one space. So there's just an example on the other side here, but these are a couple of questions that you might want to be asking yourself. Who do you want to recruit? So if you say, look, we're particularly low on senior riders, then you might make a pitch at trying to pick up your senior riders. So having a think about where I'm going to find them, uh, how am I going to connect with them? What might they actually want? So what we're going to offer. So in this little example, we're looking at primary age boys and girls. We're going to find them in local primary schools. So ask yourself the question, do you actually have a connection or relationship with the local primary schools? Is there a way of getting your information in there? Can you come and have a chat? Is there some way of promoting or presenting your club to them, and to the children that are there, and to the parents as well, because ultimately they make the decision. Other sporting groups, so are there potential crossovers? Are people out there? Our members, friends, so potentially tap into your own market and say, hey, we're looking for members. Do you know anyone who's keen? Potentially members might also know people who have horses, again, acknowledging the fact that there is that little barrier for us because they will need a horse. Local saddlery stalls, really great place for Pony Club to be, because obviously the people who are going to saddlery stalls pretty much will have voices. So potentially getting them to jump over that barrier and come and be a part of us. But you might look at placing ads in school newsletters, getting in school socials, handouts and posters. So handouts and posters might just be something that you do and you drop around the various areas around your environment, so whether it be cafes or whatever else. Attend sport information days, because some people might know what Pony Club is. Obviously, we do have the variable horse, but you can explain that to them. That's where we're at. You might find different pathways for them. You can talk to them about the fact that there is free leasing opportunities potentially out there. Talking about the opportunities, how do we link people back in and give them an opportunity to be there? Or even just say, hey, you can pop down the club and have a look at what we actually do. So that might be something else, might give people the confidence that you'll have enough people around you who know how to manage a horse, that maybe I could leap into this because my child's really keen. Running a clinic at the school. So even if that's like hobby horse style or doing something that shows what horse sport's about, that might be another interesting thing. Even running games or doing something that says, hey, we do this on horseback, but this is what it looks like. This is what it's actually about. this might be in this little example, your offerings might be around come and try days, registration information days, but let your minds run wild. How do you actually get people to maybe come and have a look at what the club is doing and understand what you're doing as a club? Very much, I spoke about this earlier. Have a website. Um, you will I think that I generally say this. I find that clubs move away from websites. They feel like they're too much work to keep. But I do encourage you to have a really good think about it, because a website, 70 to 80% of people will actually go to a website to have a look at who you are. And it's a really great place to start telling people who you are. So that when you're fielding all those questions around the fact that you need your own horse, you could address that on your website. If you get that through Messenger, you can send them to a page that talks about everything that you need to do as a member. So instead of having to retype it every time, you can just pick up that page. So it's going to save you a little bit of volunteer time as well, and give them all the information that they need on that page. So you can link them to things that they might find useful as well. So it might be a handbook, or it might be different policies, or it might be how you actually become a member, in terms of, here's the link to go and sign up. So all of those things, the website's really handy because it can house all that information for you. So make it a bit quicker as a volunteer. That websites do give people confidence in your organization. So people will arrive there and go, oh, they've got a website. I can see that they're hooked to other organizations. So probably having the links back and forward in association makes them understand that you're a part of something bigger. So there's a little bit of confidence in that it's I know that you're a real thing. Increasing your membership just through the knowledge of how you become a member and what it means. So you've got that opportunity. It's going to work for you all the time. So when you're having a little snooze and someone drops you a note, then potentially they might go to your website, or you can set up your message to go, hi, I'll get back to your question, but here, visit our website, you might find an answer there. So those types of things you can set up as well, which might save you a bit of time. Utilize your website and other communication mediums. So when you're lifting things, it just becomes a little bit easier. So it sort of creates a baseline of work, so you can actually lift things and have it be a little bit easier as a volunteer to put in front of people the things that you want to put in front of them. So it is going to save you time. It also lets you connect with partners and sponsors. So you might be able to put a link between local primary schools and your sponsors and you. So having a bit of a think about what else you can use that website for, but definitely for information around you, what your venue looks like, what you're going to offer. Really, really important. I would definitely look at that, Michelle, because Just Go do offer a web arrangement. So I'll have a little chat with Model, because I think that there's so many clubs who have shifted away because they are hard. I promote being in an environment where we can help you get back in to your website. So sometimes your website gets created by someone and it kind of goes with them, or you lose all the ability to get back in them. So anytime you can create an environment where you can get back in there, that's going to help clubs as well, because they do shift, and depending on how they're shifted, things get lost. So whatever support we can give you, I would definitely recommend being in there. But I'll have a little chat with Monel going forward around what the opportunities are. But I think being really smart about what you do on your website as well um, might mean that you're not probably doing the same updates, but you're housing some really important information that will help your life as a volunteer. It'll just make things a little bit quicker and easier for you. So in terms of our example, where to communicate, if you're saying where we're going to communicate, school-age children, we are talking, school newsletters, kindergartens, health centres, doctors, because that's where people with young children tend to be, parents often are. So having a look, we want the children, wherever the children are, but where are the parents likely to be? After school participants, maybe local cafes, gyms, universities, social media groups, local community network groups. So that's another one. There's lots of social media network groups that you might like to have a think about as your club to pitch and have people know that you're doing certain things. Other sports groups. So having a bit of a look, because you might find that there is a few alignments. And there are, depending on how horsey your community is, you might find that there's people who have horses already who are in different groups who can see the value of doing something else and being involved in your club. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes you think people know about you, but it's pretty easy for things to happen and people not know what's going on. I know that there's a think it's Dingley or Mentone Pony Club, and I drive past there, and I've had my children in the car going, "What's going on over there?" And I go, "Well, I know because Pony Club. It's Pony Club, but it does just look like a group of people on horseback doing goodness knows what." So being able to really get your message out there is pretty, important for people to understand what we're doing. I just thought I'd point you to this. We're trying, I'm not trying, we will continue to create Club Source, which is that little button on our website. This is under Club Source, under marketing. So there's a couple of nice little things in here. We'll continue to build what's in here, but there's a few nice little videos and a few little toolkits and things. So if you're looking for something and not wanting to do all the work, you might find something in there that helps you. I will eventually put a little links in here to say, hey, I was looking for this. If we could get something like that, it'd be great because that will give us a little bit of a little opportunity to know what might help you to do a job out in the field. Also look for other opportunities when we're talking about recruiting. So when we're talking about primary school children, looking for other opportunities that might exist in the organisation. So Pony Club Victoria, and I'm pretty sure WA also are doing this Ready to Ride program, which is pitched at a younger age group. So it's kind of like an Oz Kick. That's to help get younger kids in, not have it be as expensive because it's a shorter day, have it be pitched at that level of concentration that the kids might have at that point in time. So that might be a really interesting opportunity to have a bit of a look at, and might help you just to pick up a certain market of rider. And I know it's been quite successful in Victoria, and it's been quite successful in WA as well. Raz Horses program. This is Northeastern Pony Club in Pony Club Victoria. They do actually have access to a significant adjustment property, which is one of the reasons they can offer such a significant Rise Wild Horses program. But it is an example of getting over that barrier where people have to have a horse. This wasn't something else that was pitched in Pony Club Victoria many, many years ago. And it was pitched at clubs to say if you had some horses that people had that the pets or they were there and they probably could be ridden, that potentially someone might be able to bring a pony and then you could offer a couple of places. Sometimes that was offered just as grooming. A lot of the clubs said that wasn't enough. They did try and get kids on horseback. It is a lot of work for volunteers, but it might be that opportunity, even if you can get a couple of horses to get a couple of extra people in. There was a very successful program also run out at Monbulk Pony Club, where they had a year-long program. They had a certain amount of ponies. They did charge a significant amount of money for it so that people understood the cost potential of having a horse. So it gave them 1 year to sort of have a really good look at what it would be like to own a horse and then potentially make the leap into horse ownership. So, and I know that was quite successful for that club too. So there's a couple of ideas out there in the field. Obviously, the good old come and try days. And look, there it is, Zone 16. We're asking before. So, yeah, come and tries are a great way to get people, obviously, who have horses to come and have a look at Pony Club or have a look at your club because clubs aren't all the same. And I think that's a really important message to put out there too. They all have their own personalities. They've all got their own focuses, and that's fine. Being very clear about what your club, what's important to your club. So, what is your culture? What's important to your club? What are you offering? Will help people to maybe pick the best club for them. So for whatever it is that they're looking for. So to attract new participants, we need to eliminate the barriers. So have a really good think about getting rid of those barriers where we can, or understanding the barriers that might be existing for our clubs. And by changing the way you think about participation, the options we offer. So even broadening your membership categories, what can we offer? Is there something else we can offer to get people to become a member of the club in some active way? I know there's probably one other example, and it was a Victorian club because I used to work at Honey Club Victoria. That's why I have these ones. There was a lady who was speaking to me and she said, I was losing all my senior riders. They were just disappearing. She said, I stopped and I asked them, what do you want? You know, why are you leaving? They told her what they wanted and she provided it and she said they all came back. So even that sometimes might be just that opportunity to say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm giving you what you want. And they told her what they wanted. And as I say, they were quite happy and all came back. So there's an opportunity as well. Recruiting volunteers. So there are barriers to volunteering. So a very important part of our membership, we need people to come and help us. These are the biggest reasons, and this is also on the Australian Sports Commission website. So again, I'll put that link out with the letter. lack of time was one of the most major reasons that people didn't volunteer. Not being asked, and not being asked means personally asked. So actually having someone come over and say, I think you'd be really great at this job, often puts person, well, A, it's nice to know that someone thinks you're going to be good at something, and B, it's a little bit harder to say no. So even finding those people in your club that you think you're going to be great at something, might be your opportunity to get people involved. Not knowing what opportunities exist, so not knowing what the jobs are, not knowing if they're going to be skilled enough for them. So often people are assuming that they're going to be sports specific knowledge required. So if you're asking for someone to volunteer, sometimes they think, oh, well, I've just stepped in. I've only been here for 12 months. I don't know anything about, what goes on in pony club. So I don't think I'd have the skills to do it. Making sure that they understand what the job is will help them to get over that one. And lack of confidence or fear of being criticized or fear of being silly. People don't like to think that they're going to feel embarrassed or silly. So motivations, there are motivations. People like to volunteer, and obviously you guys are all here volunteering, so you've put your hand up. I know I volunteered in all sorts of spaces during my time involved with different sports. It is about getting that connection to the club community, developing skills and enhancing career prospects, which is something I think we need to be much better as volunteer not-for-profits, and particularly with young people. Having a volunteer job, and particularly something that sounds fairly, significant, like secretary's job, obviously, but things like marketing communications, an organizational type role in your club, those things look great on face. So, yeah, they can really help lead people into their careers and jobs. It can also help someone advance their career. So, keeping in mind that when we're asking people to volunteer, it's not always just volunteering. There is a lot of skills required to run clubs. So, therefore, it's a really great opportunity for people to actually build their own skills. Obviously, then, if we can put the training and resources into them as well, if we have those opportunities. There's lots of opportunities that are given in sport that won't cost money. That can also be another opportunity, particularly around people who maybe are looking at sport management, particularly, or something in the sporting field. That might be a really great opportunity for you to hook into, or anyone who's looking at marketing, comms, um, visual type communications. There's some really great things that clubs can do that you may not even be thinking about because you're so busy just getting the job done. But they could open up this entire world for your club, and that might be something that really helps someone advance their career. So I think having another real think on what you can do in volunteer jobs and to try and get those younger ones involved, um, that's a really big opportunity for clubs. Obviously, you feel good when you volunteer, you feel like you've achieved something. It might be your way of participating in the sport. And I think we sometimes miss this with volunteerism as well. Sometimes we don't provide a very clear pathway for volunteers either, or officials. Um, Often coaches are probably a little bit more looked after in the space, but creating this real pathway to say, you know what, this is my sport, and my sport is doing this officiating job. Thank you, Helen. Yeah. Strengthening social relationships. So that's another one. Being involved in clubs. People join gangs so they feel a part of something. People join clubs because they like, it's nice to feel like you're a part of something. So I think if you can really create that very social environment at your club too, that will also help with your volunteerism. People really feel like they're making a difference or they're having an impact. So they're the types of things that will keep people coming back to volunteer, or that's how you can sometimes get people in. So recruiting your volunteers, one of the most important things to really know is know what the jobs are. So there's nothing worse, and I'll give a really short example. If you have a working bee and people come and they give you 2 hours of their time, but when they rock up, someone goes, oh, I'm not sure exactly what to do. Maybe you could go there, maybe you can go there. There's nothing more infuriating for someone who said, I've set aside 2 hours for you and you don't quite know what to do with me. So be very mindful that if someone's setting time aside, that you know exactly how you're going to work them. Um, and that's in a working bee situation. In terms of your club, clearly defining what jobs need doing is really, really important, and creating jobs around that and looking at how big those jobs are and see if you can create smaller ones. Promote education and training. So if it is required, let people know that it is, if it's happening and people can tap into it, let them tap into it. So make sure that you're really promoting those types of things at your club. I know my little athletics is one of those ones where there's lots of different jobs that don't need a lot of training, but there's a little bit of training. Making sure that you're putting that out all the time. So anyone who might be vaguely interested, even if they're not doing it this year, maybe it's a 2-year plan. They at least know that training is there, and they might put their hand up when they're ready. Giving handovers as much as possible. If you can get people to hand the job over, so when they're finished, they go, "Hey, this is where I was at. This is what I was trying to do. This is where everything's kept." That's going to help people, or giving people an opportunity to shadow someone before they leave. So if you know that someone is going to step out of a role, letting someone come in, trying to get that person to come in and watch them for 6 or 12 months, if you can get 12 months, but letting them have a bit of a look at what that looks like and chatting with that person, or otherwise at least giving them access to that person afterwards. So obviously that's a little bit trickier if we leave and we're not so happy. But if we are happy, then making sure that that's in place and that person knows that they can go back to that individual. I'm sure you have a network of support, so making sure that people know who they're going to talk to when they feel like they need extra help. Building that culture of volunteering. So that's that expectation, that's setting it up. And usually that expectation is best to set at the very beginning. So when people are buying into your organisation. Make small jobs to reduce the volunteer hours because people are worried about the lack of time that they have in their lives. So if you can make little jobs, make little jobs. And so the bigger jobs might still be done by a few people, but just starting to get a few people doing smaller jobs, which might then mean that they build on their volunteer hours to you. But don't let everyone assume all the jobs, because then that person will really know what's going on and people won't feel like they want to take that job on. And let people know how long the job's going to take. So if you say, look, we just need a person who writes us an article once a month, it'll probably take you an hour. That might someone go, I can do that. That's easy. This is new. So the Volunteer Resource Hub, yeah, the Australian Sports Commission, this is on their website. They've done a lot of research in around volunteerism and have come up with this little resource hub. So there's lots of things around setting up success, attracting volunteers, supporting your volunteers, celebrating your volunteers, little videos and various bits of resourcing. So jump in and have a little look. If you're thinking, gee, we need some more volunteers, I'm out of ideas, don't know what to do, this might have a few ideas for you. So retaining members, keeping members is easier than finding members. So realistically speaking, we're in the business of retaining people. If we get them in, that's great. Let's try and hold on to them. High retention of members means we're doing something right. So if we don't roll over lots of members, we're doing something right. So why do people join clubs? People do things for all sorts of things. There's barriers to why people do things. There's reasons people do things. And knowing these really strengthens our ability to actually produce something to actually make our club stronger in recruiting and retaining. So obviously spending time with friends, doing common activities. We did that, learning and improving the chosen sport. We've had a little bit of a look at this side. So we know why people are joining. So organised competitions, activities. So we know why they're in as a part of our clubs. How do we retain them? We need to build those strong relationships through communication. Ask your members what they like and don't like. So survey them. Ensure your coaches are trained and have current knowledge and suitable to the member groups that they're with. So having a bit of a think about what we've got and how we can get that even working, because sometimes we might be shy of coaches. So how are we going to actually bring those coaches in? How are we going to bring them along? And coaches being providing the great experience, especially in Pony Club. This is rallies are basically that little hub of learning and having fun and really loving being with your horses. We need coaches that are really inspiring kids to want to continue on. So being really mindful about what's going on in that space and knowing what our members want to get out of it. How social is your club? Do you spend time creating social connections? Do you actually spend some time doing social stuff? So having a bit of a think about what are we doing? Where do we want to be? What's our culture? What do we want to have for our club? But generally speaking, if that culture, that social culture is pretty important with clubs because people are often there to have fun. That's why they want to be there. Some people are there just to compete, but most people are there to have fun. Even if they are competing, they still want to have fun. Think about the barriers to participation. So again, having a bit of a think about what might stop someone from being in your club, whether that might be an issue for you guys, and then making sure people are having fun, because that's really what sport and recreation is about, having fun. So get members' feedback. Ask them about their experiences. Ask members who didn't return why they didn't return. Create suggestion boxes. So have this opportunity somewhere. So whether it's online, whether it's a physical box where people can write things down. But don't just have a suggestion box. Have a look at that as a committee and say, oh, someone said they don't like the way you pack up at the end of the day. You might be able to say, well, that's just bad luck because we need to do that. You might be able to write back and say, hi, we had a suggestion around pack up. We really need people to do that because blah, 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 blah. And you can have this reasoning. So you can actually, that's almost getting those, reinforcing those behaviors of the culture that you want. So being able to have a conversation, not be aggressive about it, just give that information back. You might be that there's no place to do something, and you might go, actually there is, and this is where it is, and maybe we now look at it and say it's not very well communicated, so we can change that up so people know. Otherwise it might be some great suggestion, you go, oh, that's fantastic, we're going to do that next month or next rally or whatever else. Ask the children what they would like to do and incorporate as much as possible. So we've got lots of kids that making sure I'm just going to pop that over there, Helen, giving me another box to look at. I'll answer that question in a moment, Helen. Ask new members what they're looking for from your club. So when they join, what are they actually joining for? Why do they want to join? Ask new members why they came to your club, and ask them where they found out about your club, because they're all going to help. They're going to help you with your recruitment. You're going to know where people actually heard, whether that was successful. So those types of things are going to help you. I'll answer your question in a moment, Helen. Survey annually. Uh, Helen actually popped that into Q&A just to keep me on my toes. That one, Felicity, if you're looking for it. You're not? Generally speaking, there's a spot where you can go, everyone. So Michelle's got hers to host and panelist. So it depends on which way we're setting it. If you want to set it to everyone or go to everyone. So if that makes sense. Survey annually. This is one of the biggest things I feel like for retaining people. Asking people regularly. So at the end of each year, ask them what their experience was. So things that you might ask, what was your favorite thing about our club? If you could change something, if you could change something about our club, what would it be? What could the club do better? What did we do well? What did we do well? What would you like the club to do? Are you coming back next year? Really good question to ask. Are you going to come back next year? And if they say no, why or why not? So you might be able to address that. Did you like your coach? Might be another thing. Why or why not? Because it'll give you some information on what's going on. That question there, which is quite might seem a little harsh, means that you can also feed back to coaches what the experience of the member is, because a coach might be trying to do something and they think that's what an individual wants. And then if you get that feedback to them and say, look, this is the feedback we've had, they might sit back and go, oh, I didn't even think about it because I'm going down my path doing what I think they want to do. Helen just asked, do you think sending families an invoice for 100 because they did not, according to a club, complete 10 hours of volunteer work on club days or club events is helpful in retaining members? The simple answer is probably no. However, again, that's a cultural thing. So if you put it out there and say that's the expectation, that's what we want you to do, and what we're going to do to you if you don't do it is we're going to charge you dollars for it. I personally think that when you start to say I'm going to charge you $100, there's people who will go, I prefer to pay $100 and help. So that's really a question to sit back in your club and say, we know we want people to help. Is there a better way of setting up that expectation? Is there another way we can get people to actually buy into our culture of volunteerism? So it might be really selling that message that our club doesn't exist on nothing. $100 may not actually be enough to cover the cost of all the things you need volunteers to do. So if that was looking more like $1,000, there might be some families that go, oh, hang on, for $1,000, I prefer to do a couple of hours of volunteerism. So if you really looked at the costs and what you're actually trying to do through that volunteerism and what would happen if you paid people to do the jobs, then you can probably start to look at what the experience is, because not-for-profit is around that. Not-for-profit is trying to get people to give you their labor. So having volunteer roles means I'm doing a job for the club, but I'm not going to charge any money for it. And the reason I'm not paying any money is because this is a not-for-profit. all the money that gets paid by members is to provide the service the memberships are buying into. And so therefore, if I'm paying out, then that just increases the cost. So not-for-profits were set up that way. Volunteer organisations have been set up that way so we can produce a fantastic outcome without costing a fortune. So obviously, if you're not wanting that, then you will pay more. So, and that will be where the balance comes in. So I don't know if that answers your question, Helen. I kind of feel like if you want to, it's more about trying to encourage people to really buy into that volunteer environment and why we volunteer our time, because it does mean that instead of paying for it, we're actually paying for it in a little bit of time. But it could be looking at what those hours are, how many people you have in your club, what they're actually volunteering for. So it might be better that if you're mowing the lawns and that's the expectation, that you actually do say we're just going to get someone to mow the lawns, and that will become a price and that'll come into the cost of the club and the cost the members pay. So we're not spending our time mowing lawns. The volunteer work might be somewhere else. But explaining what that volunteer work is probably a part of that equation as well, Helen. Survey annually, exit survey. So making sure you know why people left. That's another one. And I don't know, you can pop in there. Um, Michelle's just asked, what's the best way to do surveys? I think it's online because it'll do all it'll collate everything for you, and then you can take it places and start crunching numbers. Anonymously, I think if for this kind of information, you probably could do it anonymously because it just gives you that general feedback. In an exit or a member survey, I'd probably give people an option to put their name on it, but don't make them put their name on it because then you're unlikely to get it back. Some people are quite happy to put their name on their commentary and say, I'm happy to tell you. But yeah, if you're looking at exit surveys, they're probably just looking for that general flow. And so if you had 5 people leave, they might all cite the same reason. And so then you've got a really good understanding of why they left the club and whether there's something that you could do about it. What made you not come back to the club? What did you enjoy most about a club? What did you enjoy least about it? So you still might get someone who's leaving telling you that they enjoyed the club in this way, but they didn't like it this way. Are you still writing is a really important question with us because potentially you've got to that point where it might be really hard to get that person back because they might have just lost their passion for doing it. If we change something, would you return? So, and would you recommend our club to others? That might be another interesting one because word of mouth is pretty important. You won't have seen Felicity, you won't have seen that question from Michelle because she's got hers to host and panelists. That's who she's sending it to, just in case you were wondering why you didn't see that comment. So take on board the feedback. Thanks, Helen. Take on board the feedback you get out of any one of the surveying. Try not to take it personally because people who are angry will vent, but try to look at what they're saying underneath whatever it is if they're having a go at someone. And then have a look and say, is there something we should change? Is this fitting at the culture of that club? Because if you got feedback and you were fairly social and you weren't overly competitive and people left you because they didn't think it was competitive enough, you as a club might say, it's actually not who we are. And we told you that sort of upfront. So that's not really what we're existing for. So it's maybe better that person leaves and goes to a more competitive club. If you're fully competitive and someone thought it was too competitive and they were looking for a more social element and you weren't really providing that, then again, you might say, oh, it's really just not where our focus is. And a large percentage of the members are happy. So looking at balancing what information you're getting back based on what you actually want to do as a club. Obviously, if you're just losing people left, right, and centre, you might need to actually take on the feedback and start to look at whether your club needs to pivot. Great. This is Game Plan resources, which I thought might be interesting just to pop up there. So if you jump into Game Plan, there's a whole little resource page, and these are some around member retention. So this is a little fact sheet. There's a couple of little bit of reading in there. They're talking about questionnaires and surveys. So it's a nice little document. There is a new member questionnaire, so it's something to really leap from if you want to do something like that. So when you've got a new member come in, then find out where they found you from. Anything else you might find out from them. So you might find out what that person's parents do, because that's usually quite interesting and can be very useful to tap into whatever resources might exist at the club. What makes sport fun? It's a nice little document. Just have a bit of a look at what, if you're saying, yeah, I don't know, are we ticking the boxes? Are we fun? This is a nice little document that just takes you through that. And as I say, they're sitting in game plan resources. Retaining volunteers. How am I going for time? We're 5 minutes past. Um, barriers to volunteering. So we looked at those before, the lack of time and not being asked, those types of things, that they don't quite know what the jobs are. Their motivations are around these things where we're being a part of something. So retaining our volunteers is a little bit creating a team of volunteers, having a group of people that really work together, looking for making those jobs smaller, promoting the advantages of putting volunteer work on resumes and younger volunteers, ensuring the roles you have will be good for promoting an individual's career. So if you know that there's some things that people are wanting to do, then start to build that, because you might be able to find people who really want to get involved with you. Look to promote training or pay for training to help volunteers do their job. So have a little plan in place to say we've got so many dollars that we're going to contribute to volunteer training. So if you need to pay for things during the year, you know that you've got so much money that you're happy to do that, and you know where the cap is. Appropriate rewards, recognition, and thanks to volunteers. So making sure that we actually do recognise people and a goal, so the volunteers know they have achieved. So knowing what they're trying to achieve will help people to feel like they've actually successfully helped, they've had an impact. And so resources, this is Club Source. We are trying to build this space. We are moving in that place. So we'll build more of this. Send to me integrity@fightingclubaustralia.com.au if there's things that you really feel like you desperately want, because I will go about and find them or build them. So yeah, just let me know if there's something that we can really help you with. This is the resource page in game plan. So as I say, even for the sake that there's all these resources, this is in each one of the modules. The resources are broken up into the modules. There's some really great stuff, and I can see that they're going to build more. They're hooking in e-learning. I'm guessing they'll end up putting the research and stuff in there. They've got webinars in there. There's all sorts of things in there resourcing. So make sure you jump in there, because it might just help when you're stuck for an idea and maybe we don't have something. There might be something in this space. And as I say, it is free. It is pretty cool. It's a nice little product. I feel like there's plenty in there that will help clubs. And as I gradually do things, so don't feel like you have to do everything at the same time. You might just find those bits that you're really struggling with and find that little bit of support that you otherwise feel like you're floundering, or know something that you didn't even know you didn't know. So the takeaways from today: understand what stops people from joining the club. So try and get that information through the exit surveys or through asking your members what's who they know, what might be stopping. Keep in mind that ponies will be an issue. Decide if your club can work around those barriers. So what can we do? So as I say, you might have the barrier that we can't provide horses, but is there a way that you can link people to other things? Can we help them get, can you send them and say there is actually this opportunity to lease ponies? Do we set up some opportunity for people to let you know that they'd like their pony leased? Is there something that you can do, that networking connections? Or is there a local riding school that we're connected to, and that might help as well. Look to provide other ways to be involved with your club. So is there other membership opportunities? I know that this probably one of the instances I talk about is like the senior rider who's only going to be at the club occasionally. There's quite a few clubs that will reduce that membership fee so that they can take out their membership, but they'll pay as they go. Are there programs that will still attract a certain type of member? So is there things that we can actually create that might actually try and bring someone else in? Can you think of something that might actually attract a certain type of member? Know what your members like and dislike about your club. So really important to ask them each year how they're going, what you're doing, are you doing well, what could you do better? Know why people leave, obviously that exit surveying. Build that culture of volunteering. So really try and produce that environment. So instead of charging people, let's talk about the reasons we need people to help. So really get in there and get them to be excited about your vision. So part of that's the visioning. Make them excited about who you are. ensure you value your volunteers too. So when they're giving you time, don't waste their time. Make sure that you have clear jobs. Sign up to game plan for a planned way to strengthen your club. As say, here's the game plan portal. I'll send that around with the letters. That's again that little module for participation with its little spots. Their participation resources. So there's lots of resources in there. So this has been the club program webinar series. Thank you so much for everyone who's popped in on all of them. It's been great to see little faces in here. Thanks to everyone who popped in tonight or has popped in often on the program. I hope you've enjoyed them. I do encourage you, please, to fill out the satisfaction survey so you can give me some feedback on what might be helpful, what might help you to do a job easier at your club. Thank you so much for hanging in there for 10 minutes too long. If you've got any questions, I'm here, or otherwise you can drop them with me at Integrity, or you can call me. Either way, happy to hear. And thank you again. If you thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for anyone who's actually sat through the recording too. It's greatly appreciated.